this was radio friendly. I mean, the radio ate this stuff up. That's why it's singles. That's why I think of it more like pop. It was radio friendly, and you still hear them on the radio today, right? The Poison, Skid Row, Bon
Right.
Jovi.
80s hairband albums that I have in my vinyl collection, which I don't have very many. I've told you before that it wasn't my main musical style when I grew up in Los Angeles back in the 80s. I was more pop and rap and R&B, but I knew the singles that were on the radio. So tonight's going to really help me out as well.
Those of you don't, are new to us, but those of you that know me, I was part of this big band in the 80s called Megamuff. Brian, you want to pull that? I think we might have an image up. Yeah, that's me in the tiger stripe there, or whatever that's called. Maybe it's not tiger, but beautiful shirt. Yeah, this was us back in the day.
Just had a process of elimination of not necessarily what a tiger stripe looks like, but I guess a zebra stripe or something. You're second from the left, right?
Yeah,
I'm assuming that's you.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. It was a long time ago. I didn't have a beard. It was much younger.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, you got another really funny, I was on the road for a long time. We were over in all kinds of countries. But somebody sent me this funny picture today. Hearing about it, I was like, gosh, I don't even remember some of these. But yeah, our interns came up with this one too. I'll let you share that one when you get a chance.
Oh, wow. Is this kind of when you were big into the groupies?
Yeah. I don't even know when this was. I don't even know who that was.
You're kind of into blondes, I think.
Yeah, she's super young, whoever it is.
Well, you do like them young, though. Dang. Very nice.
Do you guys like my rouge? My rouge is nice. Like, that's nice little makeup. Clean shaven.
Enough about
face.
your rouge. I want to hear more about these groupies that you're pulling on the side. Dang.
Yeah. So anyway, that's so Mr. Gardetta reached out and said, man, let's talk about give me the best thing. So what Brian and I did is we put a little, you guys are going to go behind the scenes with us and see a little draft room.
Amanda, the ever hopeful gardener, she would like to see more of Gardetto in the bedroom, apparently.
Okay. All right. She's the only one.
And Amanda, I believe Greg will break it down if Foreigner fits the criteria tonight, because that's a huge question of mine as well.
Hold on,
and just to let you know before we get into the section there, Greg, I had 3 people tell me specifically for Foreigner, because Foreigner, I love Foreigner, but I don't have a lot of these 80s hair band people in my collection. And I had 3 people say, yes, Foreigner is an 80s hair band. And I had 3 people adamantly tell me absolutely not. So I'm curious to find out tonight.
Well, let's go through a little bit of what the criteria is to help you out, what we're looking for here. And again, this is about the best albums of that hair band era. But some people might be like, well, what is the hair? You'd even asked earlier, what's the difference between hair metal, hair band? So what it is hair band it can be many different things, but it's been talked as hair metal, glam rock, pop metal. It was popular in the 80s, but really centered around the Sunset Strip. So you just had this, like a lot of people, I think our age probably remember the Seattle 90s sound and what happened there, this big explosion of grunge music, right? And all of a sudden everybody, before that was the 80s in the Sunset Strip. And that is where many bands started. On any given night, you could walk down the Sunset Strip and see, all the major bands that came out or all over MTV at that time and the radio playing on the Sunset Strip. It was the classic era of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I mean, it was, that's why a lot of people look down on it, because it was a goofy era, but there were some great musicians in there. There were some great bands in there, some of which held on. But it was, I would agree. It's all about big hooks and anthems, big guitar solos, the look. It was probably more about the look than it was everything else. So bright, clothing, big hair, makeup. I mean, a lot of people looked like girls. That's actually where Dude Look Like the Lady came from Aerosmith. It was all kind of about that time. And what's funny about that is that even that era caused, really is kind of why grunge blew up. It was kind of the revolt to that. I mean, bands like Metallica, who were going down to LA and had, wanted nothing to do with the hair and makeup and stuff. And then you had all these bands in the 90s just like say, okay, we're going to go down to simple. But so big hair, the look, the guitars and stuff. So in that, because of that, I would not put Foreigner on that list, but they were big during the 80s. I think that's what gets confusing, is they were big and had massive hits. Because I did some research this week. They have huge hits.
This is where I'm confused, though, because I know what you're describing. And I look at it as do probably a lot of other people. And I know people that are like really into rock music in the 80s or whatever know the difference and why a certain group like Foreigner is or is not part of the hairband category. But I just assumed it was the look, like you had mentioned, the hair of the 80s, and that they had a band. That are there drums and a guitar, and then for me, that's a hair band. And just to throw this out too, I was like, and they're white, right?
Yeah.
All hair bands are white.
Most, because
is there a hair band that's not?
Probably not. If there is, I mean, I can't think of it. I bet. I mean, there was Living Color, but they were kind of after that. But yeah, I think the thing about it is it's just the look. It's like it when you see it, but the hair band was leather pants, lace, like just super super over the top. It was all about the look and flash, and everything else was like secondary. And I think MTV is one of the reasons that era blew up too. It was kind of it was that time of, that it was big, that was a big time. MTV was blowing up, and the 80s hair bands really took advantage of that. All the videos were about fun and partying, and that's where if you think of like Foreigner, if you've seen them, I mean, they're rock. I think of them more as classic rock a little bit. And
are they? Okay.
All these things kind of like wind together when you talk music genres,
Right. And then for tonight, are we keeping it somewhat basic, or are we gonna get a hard define with this?
I think there's a lot. This is one of those things, like I said, there's going to be a lot of this debate goes all over the place, because I think you've got, music folks that like guys that play instruments and stuff would probably disagree with our list. Because some of the bigger bands commercially maybe didn't have some of the better musicians in it, but it was all about the commercial. The power ballad changed everything. I mean, in many ways,
that's right up my alley. Power ballads.
Ballads.
To this day, I was out chopping down a tree, and I had my my music going. It was all power ballads and 80s hair rock today to get ready for the show.
Oh yeah.
Jeff 100%. Moon is saying Dude Looks Like a Lady was about Vince Neil. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's out of my genre.
He's still in my thunder. Jeff, stay tuned. That's going to be episode. We might get back into our diss tracks one of these days that we brought up this week. But the power ballad is really what set it apart. Now, Foreigner did have that. They had those big power ballads, but that's another thing that separates those guys. You had to have a power ballad. And those of you that remembered the like boy band era, the early 2000s, I think of the hair bands a lot like that. There were people putting guys on stage just because they looked good. I mean, it was very girl driven. There was a lot of women and girls that followed. That was the whole, again, part of like the whole 80s debauchery was like, it was all these pretty guys and guys that look good.
And was it a little bit of a mix of the androgyny, which was kind of cutting across? Yeah. You had mentioned that before here 5 minutes ago, but that wasn't just specific to this genre, because you're talking Prince, Shalimar. I mean, the music that I was listening to, other than the rap, which I don't think really got into the androgyny part of things. Yeah. But the R&B a little bit, and the pop was definitely that too.
And a lot of that came from the New York Dolls, Alice Cooper, early Kiss, and David Bowie. All that came from this like, early glam and what they called like 70s glam rock. That really like, yeah, lots of leather. That put us into it. 80s just became about just more fun and light. Like I said, the music had no, it had no like depth to it. It was just writing songs about sex and drugs and rock and roll. Honestly, that's really what it was. I mean, nothing but a good time,
Yeah.
Just listen to the words. That could be the whole anthem. But so what's fun about this list? What do you want to go ahead and pull that up? So I put it. This is our draft board. Just a second here. This is our draft board.
Shall we tease with the draft intro music that you made?
Oh yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
All right. Because if you're spending time producing in the studio with Gardetto, I don't know if he helped you with this one.
This one is a.
You got lost searching for things you never find. And looking back at time wasted, you spent it on losing your mind. Well, if things got bad, you look worse, you just go run and hide.
Pretty good, huh?
Now things are getting a little fancier because now you've got people singing over tracks or something. What's going on?
That was a hit from that sexy band you saw at the beginning of Megamuff. So that was actually a Megamuff tune.
Ooh, did you get clearance from Megamuff?
Yeah.
They gave you the okay as part of it was one of the members?
Yeah, I checked with iTunes. Yeah. I own 25% of that band. So if we have to spend $1, I'll get a quarter or whatever. Like,
you care real quickly to expand a little bit on the name Megamuff?
It was just so 80s. It was everything about, we were trying to be in 80s. And I think there's a pedal, a guitar pedal. A lot of guitar pedals have funny names, and I believe my boy Jay had one called the Megamuff. It's like if you Google it, that's what comes up. But yeah, we just thought it was hilarious sounding. So, but as you can see, we've got the draft board pulled together. So what Brian and I have done is we've put with a few backups too, but we put our list together. And what's funny is we had a couple crossovers. We had a couple of the same bands, but different albums. And so again, this is Brian and I's list, and then we're going to try to pare it down to 5. But what do you think when you see this? Is there something you haven't seen before? Like, what do you?
So, yeah, well, I've got a few different questions, and briefly, one that's not here that I'm just curious as to why they're not. Again, and I think you mentioned it before, like Metallica. For me, visually, again, out of the genre, if I'm looking at it from outside in, I'm looking at those dudes and I'm like, they look, if I didn't know who they were, I'd be like, that's a hair band. But is it just because the style is more aggressive?
It is. It's the singing. It's, if you listen, I mean, it's pop music. I mean, honestly, in its time, in some ways, how I view country now has become like the pop music of our generation right now. It's like pop in the sense that it had a formula. Like, it was, good singers. A lot of these guys had good voices. They were higher voices. Mm-hmm. That's why they could sing the ballads, but it was just all about that look, man. It's the makeup. As you see, if you just look at that top left Poison album, that tells you, I mean, Poison to me is the quintessential like hair band. When I think of a hair band, that's who I think of. I mean, just out of the look, the makeup, the eyeliner, the whole, I mean, it was all about, like I said, show and just teasing your hair and stuff like that.
Is it possible, like, for me to determine if Pamela Anderson slept with them, they're a hair band, or made a video with them, they're a hair band? Or that's
pretty good. Yeah. Jeff said Faster Pussycat. There's so many bands that aren't on here. Because again, this was for Brian and I's favorites, if you will, or trying to think of the best album. And I love Faster Pussycat. I think they have good songs. I think there's a lot of bands in this era that had good singles, but we wanted to think of like the best album.
The best album. And it's a little difficult because unlike, I'm sure Jeff has his in his head, his top 5. Greg has his top 5. And the hard thing that Greg and I are doing is we're coming together this is how Greg put it earlier in the week when he pitched the idea of the show, was that we are in a war room, a draft war room. If you guys do fantasy football or you watch the NFL draft or something, which Greg said was going on tonight.
Yep.
And we're on the same Iller and Filthier team, and we're coming in together to propose our favorite albums of the 80s that fall within that hair band thing. So, but I'm deferring to Greg's musical background because this again is more of his genre that he knows a little bit more about. But I recognize every single one of these, and I'm sure I recognize plenty of the songs. If I heard them, I would be like, oh, I love this song, but I don't know if I could tell you what group it is.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's, like I said, that's another thing. That's part of the debate is there's a lot of bands out there. When I was going through trying to like do my own research and looking up stats and stuff, again, thinking about like a draft, like who's the best player on the sport kind of thing. I learned a lot about, I, for example, we had talked about Guns N' Roses. I wasn't sure. I didn't think of them as much as a hair band, but then the more I read, they were born on the Sunset Strip. They were based in LA. They came from 2 bands. LA Guns is another band that's not on this list per se, but that's another big hair metal band. Hollywood Rose and LA Guns were 2 bands that were in Sunset Strip. Once they broke up, that's where Guns N' Roses came from. They quickly left the Sunset Strip area. So I think they came.
Guns N' Roses came from 2 different groups, or the name.
The guys in the band, they had a falling out of a couple. Axl Rose was in a band called Hollywood Rose, and then they formed from that, became LA Guns, who Tracy Guns is their guitar player, and then Axl started Guns N' Roses, and but they kind of quickly transformed into something a little different, but if you remember the Appetite for Destruction video, again, this is MTV was huge during this, and I think it was the imaging and a lot of that is what helped drive this popularity. It was getting to see these guys all the time. That's where Headbangers Ball came from, which was a late night cool MTV show. And back, before social media and all that, these were the fun things you had to do. This is what I watched on the weekends. Watching Headbangers Ball, I would record it sometime. It was just awesome, because that's where you get to hear the music. Because some of this music didn't quite like the Metallicas of the world at this time, like you said earlier, they were aggressive, so they didn't make radio. This was radio friendly. The radio ate this stuff up. That's why it's singles. That's why I think of it more like pop. It was radio friendly, and you still hear them on the radio today, right? The Poison, Skid Row, Bon Jovi.
So let me ask you a question. Do you know they were on the radio poppy, but was that the track that was on their album as well? Because I'm asking from a rap perspective or from R&B to where I would know songs that are on the albums, and then I would hear it on the radio, and they would change it up to make the radio. Is that what hair bands did also, or no? No,
most of their stuff. They spoke in all. They didn't swear. It was all spoken like Cherry Pie, for example. She's my cherry pie. There's nothing wrong with that. You know what they're saying, White Snake, slide it in, slippery when wet, like all these things, we know what they mean, but that's how they got away with it. Motley Crue's the same way,
sure.
all these little funny, anecdotes they could make it on the radio. And that was the kind of the fun about it. It wasn't vulgar per se. It was fun pop music that you could, and it was blues based, all blues based, man. It just had this cool blues vibe to it, where it's dancey. I think it's just feel good. It's party music at the end of the day, party music. And then you suck in the girls by playing a hair ballad, and they're like, oh my God, it's so sweet. Every rose has its thorn. Arguably the biggest and best. I mean, still to this day, people love that song, right? I mean, that's the first real big power ballad that was like, you know, the broken heart. That was, you know, the original Taylor Swift was Bret Michaels writing about his, you know, his breakup.
Well, isn't a little hairband music synonymous with the strip club also? Or no? I mean,
for sure.
Look,
I mean, I've only heard from friends
that have gone back in the day, but the soundtrack at the strip club is nothing but hairband and rap music.
Yeah, Motley Crew is killing it in I mean, Pour Some Sugar on Me. It's got to be. I think you have to play that in a strip club every night.
Which group did that? Because when I hear Pour Some Sugar on Me, which I love,
which one do you think it was? It's in the top row.
Pour Some Sugar on Me. When I hear that song, all I remember are movies about strip clubs. With
Again, from your friends.
It's in the top. I'm gonna go. Well, I know it's not Guns N' Roses. I know it's not Bon Jovi. I'm gonna say Def Leppard, and I feel pretty good about that.
That's pretty correct. That is correct. Okay. Yep, that is off the Hysteria album. That was a huge record. In fact, if we want to start getting in this a little bit, that is the highest selling album on this page. So by sales and stats, Def Leppard Hysteria. So of what you're looking at here, that has sold over 12 million copies in the U.S. I kept it to the U.S. The world numbers aren't much different.
How do you say that? Is it it not Hysteria?
Hysteria, yeah. Hysteria.
Oh. Hysteria or Hysteria?
Hysteria. Like you make me hysterical, you know?
Okay. I was wondering. Okay.
Came out in 1987. This was technically their first big breakout record, but I think it's like their third album. Pyromania was before that. That got some commercial success. That kind of put them on the map. But with a lot of these guys, it's interesting. It was second or third albums that were pretty big for these guys. But yeah, I think they had like an early one. They were the British invasion of all these guys. They were from Britain. They were part of this British invasion of hair metal that kind of came in, and Def Leppard always kind of fit in with these guys, but a little different because they're British. But yeah, most selling records of this era. So this is Mutt Lange produced this album.
I've heard his name like everywhere for like 20 years. Was he involved with? Wasn't he married to Shania Twain?
He's married. So yeah, so Mutt Lange they hired him to help her with her record, which put out 16 number one singles, like ridiculous. But like, yeah, he got famous essentially from this Hysteria album, just because it blew up. I mean, it had so many bangers on it. But again, yeah, huge. It charted number one. I think it's the only one on this list that actually charted on the Billboard charts at number one. So that's a big, that's a big thing considering, you know, this type of music didn't necessarily, especially in today's world, it would never chart up that high. But yeah, so to chart number one, I believe of the list, I believe it's the only one that went number one. What would you think the second most selling?
I'll go with one of the Motley Crue ones.
I said that wrong. Hold on, let me back up. We'll have to edit this part out. I said it wrong. Hysteria was number two. I apologize. Okay. I skipped over it. Number one by a long way is Appetite. So sorry, Appetite, 18 million. So I apologize for that. I read it wrong. Yes, that's the seventh best-selling album of all time. So against any genre of music.
So Appetite for Destruction across all genres.
Yeah, number 7 or what did I say? Number 10. Yeah, seven. Yeah, seven. So that was also 1987. So think about it. Those two albums came out the same year, 1987.
So what was one or two of the big songs off of the Appetite?
Appetite was loaded. I mean, end to end, just loaded. But yeah, so you had Welcome to the Jungle. Huge, right? Yep. Played at every football stadium. Paradise City became a huge Hysteria. I don't know how to say it. Giving you Hysteria. Grief. Def Leppard Hysteria. I don't know how to say it. Hysteria.
When he said that, I started doubting how I was saying it, and I didn't want to come out because I feel like, again, not my wheelhouse. I was like, shit, I've been calling it the wrong album.
The Arsonist had oddly shaped feet. All right, I'm trying to I do a lot of things weird, Amanda, but thank you. Paradise City. Welcome
iconic
to the Jungle.
Intro too, right? I mean,
yeah,
if you're talking like the intro of a song, of any song ever made.
Sweet Child of Mine.
Wow.
Then you had like Mr. Brownstone. You had bangers that were my favorites off the record that weren't even on a lot of radio was Out to Get Me and It's So Easy. God, those are just awesome, just so, end to end.
Do you, and I'm sure there's super music people that are out there, do you gravitate towards the more popular songs on albums, or are you kind of more of a deep diver kind of a guy?
I do like finding other songs. Like I love the hits. I've never been afraid of the hits. I like pop music. I like melodies. I like stuff you can sing along with and anthems. I've always been very attracted to that.
Yeah.
So I like both. I like to find the other songs on the album. And I also like to, I hear you, Jeff B-side guy. I like finding songs after I go to a show. Usually when I go see a band in concert, you walk away with a song that maybe wasn't your favorite before, but because you saw it live, it blew. Right. And I think I've seen all these guys, all these bands. I feel
like Jeff buddy of yours.
Yeah. Jeff's a KC guy.
Jeff, don't take this the wrong way, but I feel like Jeff would clown on me for music taste or whatever, because when somebody says they're a B-side guy, like I feel like I can't open my mouth and say, "Ooh, I love the big hits." You know,
Jeff
I like some of the B-sides stuff, and in groups that I like over the years, there are certain songs that I like more that people don't necessarily know about.
Yeah,
but I think if I had to pick and choose, it's more of the popular songs. I'm a simple person.
Yeah.
And
there's nothing wrong with pop. They're popular for a reason. I mean, popular songs, there's a reason they sound good. I mean, they're just, when you write a song like that, sometimes you just know. I mean, any band I've been in, I mean, where we've had to write, 8 to 10 songs that had an album, I've done it a lot. There's always 2 or 3 that just jump off at you that are just, you can't wait to play them. You want people to hear them. Not all of them are like that. Right. So I think I get it. I think they're that way for a reason, Appetite, 18 million. That's your number one, at least from a sales. I'm just kind of, giving you the stats. Like we said, Hysteria, Amanda, is 12 million. So that's your number 2. And then
Hysteria is the second one you said?
Yeah, tied with Bon Jovi. These two both have sold 12 million copies of these particular albums, that is. That came out in 1986. Slippery When Wet, top 100 best-selling of all time, and 12 million copies. But I would say of these bands, Bon Jovi probably had, I bet if you looked it up, the best catalog of sales. I mean, Guns N' Roses is probably up there too, and Motley as well. But man, Bon Jovi, I feel like had a lot of longevity.
Do you find within this genre again that the fans for, let's say, Guns N' Roses are the same fans for Bon Jovi? I think Bon Jovi, when I think of them, I love it's the group, right? Or are we referring to the guy? I don't know.
Yeah.
I see them, that group, as female. And then I see Guns N' Roses as a male audience.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's because when I think of Guns N' Roses, I think of 6th grade when I grew up in Baldwin Park, California, not a suburb, but outside of Los Angeles. And Brian Park, the fact that I even remember, he was a huge Guns N' Roses fan, and he was telling me how to get with a girl. And I for whatever reason, I associate him with Guns N' Roses. And he was like, "Oh, Brian, you got to do this and this." And I'm just like, "Oh, I mean, I would panic because I was a little, I wasn't experienced with anything at the time." And I remember like we would be out in PE and he would just tell me about getting with girls and what I need to do. And then he would talk about Guns N' Roses. So that's what I associate with Guns N' Roses. I always think of this Brian Park guy.
I think you're onto something there. I think they're, again, I think Guns N' Roses was later. Again, that album came out in 87. So that was kind of the tail end. I mean, you had Nirvana and those guys hitting around 89. And I think one of the things that you hear about this is most of these bands were rooted in blues. Guns N' Roses did have some blues, but they were also
did his advice work?
At least
Amanda
once.
was wondering. His advice, when I look back on it, would probably land me in jail, Amanda. I'm not going to get into the details here because I think Iller and Filthier there's a level of decorum on this show that we can't get into.
Yeah, we're
but what he told me I needed to do with girls, I can't even mention on the show because now we're 50 talking about it.
Yeah. We'd hurt our back. Now is what he's saying. No, what I was saying is I think they're at the end. The Guns N' Roses had a punk element to them. They did have the ladies following them, but I think there was something. John Bon Jovi was a heartthrob, right? Girls loved him. He's what sold that band. A lot of these guys. I mean, Bret Michaels was. I think girls considered him a good-looking guy. A lot of these guys had that look. Vince Neil from Motley Crue was always this blonde guy. I mean, that's him on the cover. I mean, look at what he's wearing on the cover of the Too Fast for Love. I mean, it's just that's classic. That's.
And then who were the guys that Pamela got with?
The drummer of Motley Crue. Among
Tommy
others.
Lee, right?
Yeah, Tommy Lee.
Tommy Lee.
Drummer.
She got with the lead singer of one of the other ones though. Before Tommy Lee.
I think so. Yeah, I can't. I mean,
her initial video that came out before the Tommy video.
Oh yeah, that might have been Bret Michaels.
I bet your boy Jeff would know.
He might. Yeah, Jeff's my guy.
I saw more TNA at the Guns N' Roses show at Arrowhead than I ever saw in my life.
That's funny.
What is Y&T?
Another band.
Oh, okay.
Forgot what it stands for. Y&T. He'll know. He'll be. Jeff turned me on to most of these. Well, maybe not these bands. He definitely turned me on to like the heavy stuff I listen to now.
Right.
And in fact, funny story. Jeff and I once played in a hair metal band that was a Christian band called Striper, and they were big during this era too. They were Christian based, so they had like their own little niche. And Jeff and I went to church together growing up because we were sinners. And we played with his best friend Mike. We played a little band. We called it Revelation because that was the last book in the Bible. So it's the most metal one. This is the dark one. So we thought it was pretty fun. But yeah,
so Striper. Instead of getting with 17-year-old girls, you guys are just into music that was talking about getting with Jesus, right?
Yeah, but I mean, to get with girls.
Wow.
Who like Jesus,
right.
It's no different than LA, Brian.
Why? I mean, these albums, like I don't know necessarily like Skid Row. I'm sure I know songs if they came on, but I wouldn't be able to attach to Skid Row.
I remember you, 18 in Life, went 5 times platinum. So it sold 5 million records. That came out in 89. That was a banger of an album too. Enough's Enough, so personal favorite of mine. That one meant a lot to me. That's a personal pick. Like I love that album. They're a Chicago band, but kind of had that same. They had a couple big singles. Didn't sell a lot of records, but they came out of like I said, they were very Beatles and Chicago influence. So big Cheap Trick and big Beatles influences. But I love their stuff. I learned to play drums to this album, that Enough's Enough record. So it means a lot to me, but it won't make the list. I get it.
So on our top 5 that you're going to kind of narrow it down to, and I'm here to help you. Yes. I defer to your way of ranking tonight, and I appreciate you included a few of those here.
Yeah.
What are the ones, because you have 5, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Yeah, we got 5. We got to narrow it down.
Can you roll out then for me, just so that I can get my head straight with time?
Yep.
Are there 3 that you'll rule out right now in the war room?
Yeah.
That we're going to get rid of for whatever, not that we're saying they're not good albums, but we're getting rid of.
Yep.
Consideration.
Right. Enough's Enough. We said Foreigner maybe didn't quite make the list. Great singles. Let's
I'm
see.
liking the production of the effort you've put into that. I appreciate that as your co-host.
I think the top row is where it's at, but not necessarily the album. So I think we have a choice between one of the Poisons.
Okay.
And I think we have a choice between the two Motleys. And I think these three are locks out of just the pure longevity of, I mean,
Guns
just
N' Roses, the
Bon Jovi,
Appetite for Destruction, Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet,
yep.
and then the Def Leppard, Hysteria, or if you're from Kansas City, Hysteria.
Yep. So this is where I'm at now.
Look at the graphics. I'm loving it.
This is kind of where I'm at. I kind of feel like Guns N' Roses is number one to me when you think if they're, and again, some people might argue they're not, but if they are, and for us, we said they are just because they started there. I can't not put them number one. I'm torn on those. So now we got to pick 3, 4, and 5. But I think I know what I want to do.
Can I just interject?
Yeah, of course.
For the head coach here of our in the war room, I'm just drawn towards certain albums here.
Okay.
Again, what I know, and the Def Leppard Hysteria for me, I think I'm going to try to push up the list if I can for you. The Guns N' Roses, I can't argue either, but the Pour Some Sugar on Me brings back great memories of other people going places and hearing that all the time.
All right. You've helped. This is why we're together, man. Intern Brandon working in the or Lance. It's intern Lance tonight helping us out.
I'm glad Lance is here to help out.
I like that. I think you make a great point. I mean, these songs are so well known, and there's longevity there. They're still a band. They're still making music. Bon Jovi, I think, is the same way. I like them in the 3 spot. Again, they both sold about the same amount of records and albums. And
on Slippery When Wet, what's the big hit off of that one?
That's got your karaoke champion. I mean, it's You Give Love a Bad Name and
Living on a Prayer. Is that on there?
Prayer. Yeah. I mean, but when I think about the longevity of the guys too, I mean, and how many good records they have and albums, I really like this order. So what's the tricky part is 4 and 5 for me. So
right now, Greg has leaning towards Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. He's got that towards the top of the list.
Yep.
And then he's got Def Leppard, Hysteria towards the top. He's got that just behind Guns N' Roses so far. And then what was that third one that you had on there also?
Oh, on here?
Yeah.
Skid Row, Warrant, and Skid Row.
No, on the one you had 1, 2, and 3 so far, like your top 3.
Oh yeah,
that you were leaning. What was that third one that was there?
Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
You can't. I even think if Amanda was still here, I mean, she would put in her 2 cents for Bon Jovi.
To be 2. I think you can't go wrong there, but I think you're right. I mean.
I can live with this so far. I mean, top 5 is hard with all of the albums of the 80s that are hair bands and the singles that came out of it. And then, maybe Jeff, and maybe there's some lesser known songs that you and Greg both know. I feel like if I went to the record store tomorrow with you, Greg, I would want to get at least these first 3 so far. So I agree. Top 3 right now. Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction, Def Leppard, Hysteria, Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet. I'm good with those as our top 3.
I like the thought of, if I think about how MTV plays into this, I gotta think, and both of those made great videos, but I gotta think Def Leppard, I mean, was big on MTV. I mean, I know Bon Jovi was too, but I'd be curious. So
do you know how many young women were sent to college off of Def Leppard's album?
Oh yeah, seriously, a lot of single moms, and we're not here to single anybody out,
making ends meet. And I'm sure, have you not been to a male or not? Well, obviously we haven't, but friends of ours that have been to male strip clubs, do they play the same music? I wonder.
Jeff, what do you think? I don't know. I'll have to ask Jeff because I know he goes to a lot of those male strip clubs.
Maybe they play "Pour Some Sugar on Me" also.
They should,
and I would be fine with that because it's a hit song. Is a hit song.
Yeah, exactly.
So we got 2 spots left on the top 5.
Yes, all right. So let's go back to our list. So here, I think all these great songs. White Snake. I mean, come on, you had David Coverdale and his lady dancing on his car. I mean, the appearance of Here I Go Again, and in Old School. I mean, Frank the Tank working on the red Camaro, and then Cherry Pie, legendary. But I got it. So 4 and 5 for me. I think we have to put Motley Crue at 4 because I think you could argue that for them to be 1. Again, these guys are kind of the face of the Sunset Strip. I mean, they
You're just talking Motley Crue?
Yeah, everything about them was LA.
And that's the one with Tommy, right?
Yeah. And like I said, Poison to me is when I think of hair metal and hair bands, I think of Poison. And I was a big Poison fan.
Can I defer to you, but I'd like to argue Motley Crue getting into this top 5 of ours, because when I think of Motley Crue, I think of Tommy, and then I think of Pam, and then I think of the video, and then I think of like our time at Mizzou, because wasn't that about the time that video came out? The Pam and Tommy video, late 90s.
Yeah, should have been. Yeah, But they were still, but during that 90s era, they weren't doing a lot. They had a big hiatus. All their albums, because their biggest album was what's on here. It was Dr. Feelgood, the bottom right, the green.
Yeah.
So Dr. Feelgood came out in 1989. So again, right at the end of the era. But that was like their 5th record, because you had Too Fast for Love, Shout the Devil, Theater of Pain, Girls, 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 and then Dr. Feelgood. And Dr. Feelgood was this album. So to me, this is the one. I think this is 4. It was a top. So it topped the charts too. So like Hysteria did. It topped the charts when it released 6 million copies. And it changed the sound of music. Bob Rock produced that album. And for those of you that know the Metallica Black Album, Metallica went to him and said, we want our album to sound like what you did on Dr. Feelgood. The sonic value of Dr. Feelgood, the way the bass and drums jump out. I mean, he made himself a career with that album. That's why they hired him to make that record. This was their first sober record too. It's a very well done and good sounding album.
Which sober records really don't do well, right? We want our artists, with some issues, right?
Right.
I concur. I say this is a great album. Of just the songs that you had mentioned, I would bring that into our top 5 as well.
All right, I like that in the 4 spot. And then I think to wrap this up, I think I got to go with your pick. I agree with you. I think it's Open Up and Say again, Poison is the band that I think of when I think of hair metal and hair bands. So I think I got to put Poison in for sure. They were one of my favorite, like I said, favorite bands. I played a lot of drums to those guys. Big fans of them. And this is a great album.
I would go get these 5 albums right now then.
Yeah.
I need to add this too, because the whole point of my vinyl collection right now in the last few years is for me to revisit certain areas of music that I never really gave that much of a chance to, and listening to it for really the first time.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, I know some of the bigger songs, but I don't have any of these albums. I need to go get it. So I'm using our show tonight. These are going to be the 5 albums that I get that I'm going to add to my collection.
The fun thing about that, like I would say end to end, I mean, Appetite is awesome. The rest of them probably have some spots that are okay. It's like they had these just banger hits, and then some of the other songs, but I'd argue probably I listened to all these records in the last day and a half or so as well. And I got to say Motley's and Bon Jovi's are pretty solid, like songs end to end. Poison's got some big hits. I mean,
when you're on a date night with Rach, And I don't think your kids are watching our second episode. I think if they were tuning in, they'd tune into the first one. The second one, they're like, yeah, we're done with this. When you guys are date night and you guys come back home, are you throwing on one of these, songs?
No, not
you guys go out to eat and liquored up a little bit and you're like, oh, I'm going to put on some Def Leppard.
Yeah, I mean, she used to play like Pour Some Sugar on Me and stuff, but again, with her bad neck and stuff and back, I mean, we're so old now, it's Slippery When Wet. That's just that's danger. It just
that's
says
all about ruptured discs when we're our age,
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And Open Up and Say Ah. I mean, that's what I do with the doctor all the time when I think I'm dying of something.
Which is like every other week for you and I.
Yeah. So no, I think this is a great list.
Yeah. Great list. So number 1, Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. Number 2, Def Leppard, Hysteria. Number 3, Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet. And I think a lot of these like titles and stuff sound like you and I making podcast shows, like coming up with names for them. Iller and Filthier, Tossing Salad podcast. Yeah. Motley Crew. What's the album name for that one?
Number 4.
Dr. Feelgood.
Yeah.
And then Poison.
Open Up and Say Ah.
Open Up and Say Ah.
So that would have been that's their
a formidable number. Yeah. That's a formidable 5 right there.
And that album, it probably has, like I said, maybe arguably the anthem of the 80s of this genre, which was Nothing But a Good Time. I mean, just if you listen to that song, you'll understand what hair bands were all about. But that's got Every Rose Has Its Thorn too. So that's why that album. And Fallen Angel. I mean, the story of the Midwestern girl that wants to go to Hollywood to make it big, but then she gets there, like such a heart-wrenching video. She realizes her family and friends are right. She comes home to him at the end. I mean, just it's kind of like,
who's the video that had anybody that grew up in the 80s remembers Tawny Katane on the.
That was Whitesnake.
The Hood. That was a Whitesnake.
Yep.
Is that?
Yep.
Is Whitesnake a cool group to listen to?
No, okay. They're good. Yeah, they've got good musicians too. Also, they're a good. They got probably a little Zeppelin to them. They probably came out of the sort of Zeppelin vibe, into this genre. But yeah, he very cool. I got to throw some honorable mentions out there. We've heard some people say some stuff, but like I said, I mean, Rat is another one you're going to hear a lot of people talk about. Rat had great music. Dokken, George Lentz was his name. He was the guitar player for Dokken, arguably probably one of the best guitar players, like a true, really good guitar player that came out of that genre.
Dokken's a group. I have no idea. Would I know a song?
You might, yeah. I mean, again, they didn't have as many radio hits as some of these other guys. I mean, Twisted Sister, you could say, was at the beginning. Quiet Riot, they were probably on the early side of that. They probably were bigger before this genre really took off. I mean, they were probably a little early almost because they were. I feel like Twisted Sister was like 1983. I mean, I was a kid. Believe it or not, I was a kid once, and I mean, I was really turned on to them and Quiet Riot really early. Cinderella, another, like a lot of people argue that's a great band, which they are. I mean, I have big singles too. You'd know a lot of these guys. Say if you heard it, you'd probably be like, oh yeah.
I think it'd be fun if we lived somewhat close to each other or something, especially this week since I'm home alone all week. That you took me down memory lane on some of these groups and played some songs that you're like, I know you've heard this. And again, my thing is attaching it to the actual group.
Right.
I think tonight was actually quite helpful for somebody like myself.
Right.
That I've heard some of the big ones, but it's kind of cool knowing a little bit more of the backstory and the LA strip history of it. And the Guns N' Roses, I didn't know anything about that.
Oh, they've got them. I've got them in my. So I got a wall of fame in my studio. This is Studio G for those of you that don't know, and I got a wall of fame, and Appetite is right over there. I've got my best favorite albums at the top. So when I'm playing drums, it kind of helps inspire me.
Has Rachel seen the Tommy Lee Pamela video or no?
Yeah. She's always trying to want to redo it.
Always I'm like, pushing that porn stuff on you or whatever.
I know it's terrible.